The cost of prescription medications is on the rise. In fact, in some cases in the U.S., they are double the cost of identical drugs in other high-income nations. This is according to a U.S. House report. Our State Capitol Bureau Chief Vanessa Kelson investigates the role of middleman drug companies and their impact on the price tag of your medications.
His smile and...
Yeah, he went through it all.
Tell me about Cole.
Cole was a very free-spirited kid.
Free-spirited, very curious.
Cole Schmidtnick was diagnosed with asthma at 18 months old.
He was put on a daily steroid medication. It was life-changing for him.
Then in January this year, Cole, now 22 years old, went to pick up his prescription.
The insurance company changed the formulary, which rose the price of it to over $500. He walked out, chose rent over his medicine.
Days later, Cole's parents say he had a severe asthma attack without his inhaler.
He suffered cardiac arrest, and when he got to the hospital, he was lifeless. They had to revive him. And then spent the next 6 days
on a ventilator
in the ICU, making decisions that we never thought we'd have to make.
At the time, Cole's parents, Bill and Shannon, didn't know why the cost increased. That is until they found the cost of Bill's prescription for his own asthma also increased by the same amount.
Oh my gosh, this is what happened. This is what happened to Cole.
Cole's parents cite PBMs, or pharmacy benefit managers. The FTC describes them as middlemen, negotiating the terms and conditions for prescriptions.
It's just this unknown creature out there that's controlling care.
This unknown, now highlighted in a Federal Trade Commission report released this summer, says, quote, the powerful middlemen inflating drug costs and squeezing Main Street pharmacies. While we can't confirm PBMs caused the price increase in Cole's case specifically, PBM's power over prescription drug access are also the subject of recent congressional hearings and an FTC lawsuit for allegedly inflating insulin prices.
We work with drug manufacturers to provide or negotiate price concessions from them. That's really the only tool we have to help lower the cost of prescription drugs.
Sean Stevenson is the director of state affairs for the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, representing the 6 largest PBMs, including the PBM Cole's insurance worked with, and all of which the FTC is currently looking into. What impact do PBMs have on the price of prescription drugs?
Great question. So none at all. List pricing of prescription drugs is exclusively up to the drug manufacturer. PBMs play no role in setting the prices of prescription drugs.
Why is it that so many other entities disagree with that? The FTC, members of Congress, why is there so much conflation and confusion over this point?
Well, I think they stand to gain by spreading falsehood.
They're most powerful, influential companies in our country that no one's ever heard of.
Dan Strauss is talking about PBMs too. A now retired pharmacist at the local independent hometown pharmacy chain sees things differently and is advocating nationwide for more regulations for PBMs.
Your heart just breaks and it makes you angry that somebody is willing to do that to another person.
Strauss says independent pharmacies and his customers are left in the dark, with the FTC report describing PBM business practices as, quote, extraordinarily opaque and, quote, without transparency or accountability to the public, end quote. Leaving many pharmacists with little recourse when a prescription price like Cole's is raised overnight.
But we have no choice because 3 large PBMs control over 80% of the market. So if you're going to serve, you are forced to take these contracts, like it or not.
The FTC agrees. The 3 largest PBMs control nearly 80% of prescriptions filled. Stevenson says these days it's closer to 70%.
Real PBM reform.
For now, Bill and Shannon want to breathe life into their son's memory.
My son's death is just one of many out there.
With Bill testifying in front of the FTC with their son's story.
Our little smiley face was Cole's one and only tattoo, was this exact tattoo. My sister, who would never get a tattoo, has it. My nieces, my sister-in-law, I mean, everybody has their little reminder to be happy from Cole.
For the sake of transparency, dedicating their work to Cole, vowing never again.
Cole was a fight for the little guy kind of person, definitely a fight for what he believed was right type of person. And so now we're trying to take that and fight on his behalf.
Next, in this two-part series, I spoke with local pharmacists about the impact PBMs have on their businesses and the reason behind why some say there's a rise in pharmacy closures. In Madison, Vanessa Kelson.
Local and independent pharmacies can be cornerstones of communities providing individualized health care. But now Wisconsin and the country is facing a wave of closures. Our State Capitol Bureau Chief Vanessa Kelson explores why pharmacists say they're struggling.
The insurance company changed the formulary, which rose the price of it to over $500.
Shannon and Bill Schmitnick believe that also cost their son Cole his life.
Chose rent over his medicine.
Now, the 22-year-old's parents are advocating for reform for pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. The FTC describes them as middlemen, negotiating with drug manufacturers to determine the terms and conditions for prescriptions.
We'd like to say this is a one-off, isolated incident, and it's not.
Dan Strauss, a now retired pharmacist at Hometown Pharmacy, says patients aren't the only ones impacted. What sort of direct impacts were PBMs having on your business?
Brutal.
Just last month, the FTC chair was in Madison.
We enforced the nation's antitrust and consumer protection laws.
It was an opportunity to bring the family's questions about reform straight to her. Can you talk a bit about the impact PBMs have on local independent pharmacies and consumers?
I've heard a lot of concern from independent pharmacists about whether they're getting squeezed because of some of these practices.
The FTC accuses PBMs of sometimes overpaying their own pharmacies for filling prescriptions, making it even harder for independent pharmacies to compete.
Our relationship with them is one where they are aggressively working to, make it harder and harder for us to be in business.
Thad Schumacher, a pharmacist and owner of the independent Fitchburg Family Pharmacy, describes his relationship with PBMs like a slot machine.
You send a claim into a PBM, and that's like pulling the lever. And when the reimbursement information comes back, you could make $10 or you could lose $100.
The PBMs can actually force you to take losses to serve your patients.
So how much loss are we talking?
In 2023, we had lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 over a 6-month period. And that comes directly out of my pocket.
Do you ever worry about your pharmacy?
Like financially?
Yeah.
All the time.
1 in 3 independent pharmacies are considering closing in 2024, according to a study from the National Community Pharmacists Association.
We will work with pharmacies to help reduce costs.
Sean Stevenson is the director of state affairs for the Pharmaceutical Care Management Association, representing the 6 largest PBMs. The FTC is looking into all of them. Stevenson says the overall deal pharmacists make with PBMs is a net profit.
But could they be losing money on 1 or 2 drugs? Sure.
And what happens if a pharmacy doesn't like the deal and doesn't sign the contract?
They would not have access to patients that belong within our PBM.
Stevenson says PBMs represent 275 million Americans, meaning if pharmacists don't work with PBMs, they couldn't serve up to 3/4 of their customers.
They need to be regulated. They're one of the only healthcare industries that is not regulated by the government, and they've taken advantage of that.